Tips for Success, Exercise Set 1.1, Distinguishing Premises from Conclusions, from A Workbook for Arguments by Morrow and Weston. Distinguishing premises from conclusions is sometimes more of an art than a science. We'd all be better off if people were always clear about their premises and their conclusions of their arguments, but this isn't really the way things work in the world. Given this, learning to distinguish premises from conclusions is important, and it takes practice. So here we're going to have the opportunity to do some of that practice. There's a couple of strategies you can keep in mind to help with this, however. The first strategy is to ask yourself what the author of the argument that you're considering is trying to convince you to believe. The claim that the author is trying to get you to believe is going to be the argument's conclusion. Then, you can ask what reasons the author gives to try to convince you of this conclusion. These reasons will be the argument's premises. The second strategy for distinguishing premises from conclusions is to look for indicator words. Some words or phrases are conclusion indicators. These are words or phrases that tell you that what you're about to read or hear is the conclusion of an argument. Other words and phrases are premise indicators. These tell you that you're about to read or hear a premise in an argument. So here's a few conclusion indicators. Therefore, thus, hence, so, consequently, and this shows that. These are all words or phrases that indicate conclusions. Here's a few premise indicator words. Because, since, given that, for, on the grounds that, and this follows from. These are all words that indicate premises. Now here's a couple more pieces of advice. First of all, you shouldn't rely solely on indicator words. This seems like an easy way to go, but ultimately there's a lot of situations where it can trick you. Some arguments won't use any indicator words at all, and others are going to use indicator words in other ways, so not to indicate conclusions or premises. Some words like because, since, and so have many other uses. Not every use of because indicates that you're about to hear a premise. When in doubt, fall back on the first strategy. Ask yourself whether the author is giving you a reason for the conclusion. If your answer is no, you haven't found a premise, even if the sentence includes words like because or since. A second piece of advice is to not assume that everything in a passage is either a premise or a conclusion. Not all passages even contain arguments. Some passages are telling stories, or describing things, giving explanations, issuing commands, making jokes, or doing other things besides giving reasons for a conclusion. And even in passages that do contain arguments, some sentences or clauses will provide background information, make side comments, and so on. So, this is to say that even in arguments, there are some parts of these passages that aren't part of a premise or a conclusion. Again, the key is to ask yourself, is this sentence stating a conclusion or giving me a reason to believe that conclusion? If it's doing either of these two things, it's part of an argument. If it's not part of an argument.